Good morning. It's Loren Lockman coming to you from the Tanglewood Wellness Center in Costa Rica. And I wanted to share with you a little bit this morning about a simple idea that many people don't really think about very often. I've talked many times, most of you have heard me say, numerous times, especially if you've been here for a while already, as I said earlier today, that symptoms are always evidence the body is cleansing or healing. That's always what's going on, with the exception of trauma. If you've been run over by a car and your leg is now in two pieces, that's not a symptom of cleansing or healing. That's a symptom of some damage that you might want to have looked at. But if something spontaneously comes up, you have a headache or a fever or a sore throat or whatever it might be, or urinary tract symptoms, that's because your body is attempting to cleanse or heal. There's something going on it's trying to do. And as you've all heard me say before, every time we suppress those symptoms, what we're doing is allowing ourselves to feel better by eliminating the symptom, but at the cost of real healing. And so it's important to understand that not only does treating symptoms not ever make us healthier, you might get healthy in spite of the treatment, right? People get healthy in spite of medicine, but not because of it. Never because of it. Because we're only suppressing symptoms. Not only are we not going to get healthier because of it, but we're actually making ourselves more toxic, less healthy. Because if the body was attempting to, let's say, cleanse itself, and we take something to prevent that from happening, be it a medicine or an herb or whatever it might be, now the body stops cleansing. That's why the symptom goes away. We feel better, but the body's more toxic because whatever it was trying to get rid of, it now can't get rid of. And in addition to that burden, it also now has the additional burden of the cure itself. Whatever that substance was, is also now in our system. Okay? And every medicinal substance, every substance that we can take that has that impact, the way those things work, whether it's a drug or an herb or something else, those things work by introducing a toxin into the body which the body reacts to in such a way that we get symptomatic relief. So we feel better, but again, we're actually not better. We're more toxic than we were before. Does this make sense to everybody? So taking this the next step, what we want to realize is that in order to get sick, in order to have symptoms, it requires a certain level of vitality. If your vitality is too low, there won't be any symptoms. So, you have a child, and you have a child, you have a child?
Yes.
You guys don't have children. Okay. Hope not. Not yet. Anyway. So, you can probably, and the rest of you, were you ever a baby? Anybody? Raise your hand. Never? Okay. Anybody still a baby? Am I the only one? Okay, there's a couple of us here. So, I had a feeling that was the case. So you can probably remember when your children were little babies, they probably projectile vomited, right? Or their temperature might go from normal to very high very rapidly. But those kinds of things, those very acute healing crises, rarely happen to adults. Is that because we're healthier? Or is that because little babies typically have a higher level of vitality than we do? Because what's true is that is my opinion, the longer most people live on the planet, the more toxic they become. Most people are becoming more toxic every day because the body can't keep up with the load as it's coming in. So our vitality is literally decreasing. Now I thought of a situation that illustrates this very well that I thought I'd share with you. And it was probably 10 or 12 years ago. I had flown into Santa Monica Airport, just west of LA, for a lecture tour of Southern California. And the young woman who'd arranged the events in Southern California picked me up at the airport. And she was telling me she was very excited. Everything was all set and ready to go, and she was really happy about how everything was working out. But she was disappointed because there was one person that she wanted to come to one of the events that wasn't going to come. Just wasn't interested. And she told me that every day she would take a walk on the beach with this guy. In fact, I'll tell you the story. The man I'm talking about was a very wealthy man. He was not quite 50. Anyone know Santa Monica, California? Santa Monica is LA's beach, right? LA is inland. And if you go due west, you come to Santa Monica. Or Santa Monica is one of those towns right there on the coast. It's one of the beach towns. And waterfront property, beachfront property in Santa Monica, my guess is it's in the millions. It's a little pricey. Now, he didn't live in a house. He lived in a condominium in a building that sat right on the beach. Okay? And, my guess is at the time this unit was at least $1 million. So to get a sense of how wealthy this guy was, he owned 9 other units in the building where he kept his stuff. Okay, he had like $9 million worth of closet space. Oceanfront closet space. No one lived. In fact, the woman who set these events up for me was a young, aspiring model, a beautiful young woman, and she was camping out in one of his closets. She had a mattress on the floor surrounded by all of his stuff. That's how she knew him. Right? And so every morning they would take a walk on the beach together, and I said, tomorrow I want you to call him and see if it's okay with him if you can arrange for the 3 of us to meet tomorrow morning for a walk on the beach. So she did. So I had a chance to meet this guy. And she hung back and let me have a chance to speak to him alone. And we spent about an hour walking down the beach and back. And he had seen the flyer that had been prepared for the events. And it said, what was true at the time, something like, Loren hasn't been sick a day in 15 years. And he said to me as we're walking along, he said, I never get sick either. And I said, well, that might be positive. And he said, what do you mean? How could it not be positive? And I explained that in order to get sick, one has to have enough vitality to create a symptom. I mean, your temperatures have been high for mostly these last few days, right? Your body has to work to raise its temperature. It's not an accident. It happens on purpose because certain things happen more quickly at higher temperatures. Lymphocytes and leukocytes work harder at higher temperatures. So when there's an infection, the body raises its temperature on purpose. Okay? It requires energy to do that. It requires energy to mount every symptom we experience. And if there isn't enough energy, there may be no symptoms. So I explained this to him, and he said, he wasn't quite sure. But by the end of our walk together, he said to me, he said, Loren, everything you said makes sense. He said, I'm going to come fast with you. But it's going to take me a while to clear my schedule. Now, this guy owned or was a major stockholder of a long list of big companies. He owned a home on Central Park in Paris, in London. He owned an island. He had yachts and airplanes and helicopters. This guy was a billionaire. Okay? And so he said, it's going to take me about 6 months to clear my schedule, but I'm going to come do it. Well, he never did. He never did because 2 months later, he was in London, and he dropped dead at 47. There was no symptoms. He was never sick. They don't know what happened. I know what happened. In order to be alive, every single function of your body requires enzymes. Now, in a book called Enzyme Nutrition by Dr. Edward Howell, published 30 or 40 years ago, Howell did lots of research. He worked for the National Enzyme Company. What he found was that the average 60-year-old's body produced roughly 20%, if I remember correctly, as many enzymes as the average 18-year-old. The pancreas is the enzyme factory of the body. The pancreas of the average 6-year-old was no longer capable of producing all the enzymes it needed to. Now, is that because you think the pancreas wears out with 60 years? What do you think? There are people alive today that have 120. It's obviously not that the pancreas isn't designed to last only 60 years, but people are making the pancreas work much harder than it was ever designed to work. We were designed to consume only those things available to us in nature. Show me the processed sugar in nature. Show me the soda, right? The pop, what do you call it? Midwest pop, right? It doesn't exist in nature. The average child today consumes, I forget, some outrageous number of pounds of processed sugar every year. Pounds of it. The pancreas, which in addition to producing all the body's enzymes also produces insulin, it's not designed for that job, which is why type 2 diabetes is a massive problem today. Type 2 diabetes, which used to be called adult onset diabetes. No one uses that term anymore. Anyone want to guess why? Because children are 50% of new cases. No one used to develop type 2 diabetes until they'd been around for a while abusing their pancreas. But today's generations, the last few generations, they fast-track this. Let's not wait 40, 50, 60 years to screw up the pancreas. Let's do it in 10 or 5. Okay? So we're creating these problems ourselves. And the pancreas wears out, and it's no longer capable of doing its job. It breaks down because we've pushed it harder than it was ever designed to go. And if you think of any factory, the pancreas you can think of as an enzyme and insulin factory. Well, imagine that you had any factory. It could be a flip-flop factory, okay? And that flip-flop factory, say that 10 times fast, was designed to produce 300 pairs of flip-flops a day. But let's say you try to produce 400 pairs of flip-flops per day. What's going to happen? There's going to be a breakdown somewhere. The system can't handle that. It wasn't designed for that. That's what happens in the body. Okay, the pancreas, the body's enzyme and insulin factory, breaks down because it's been pushed to do more than it was ever designed to do. It can't keep that up. And so what happens when there are no longer enough enzymes being produced to be alive? We cease to be alive. That's what natural death is. And it's interesting. You're a private nurse. Have you ever spent time working in hospitals?
Sure, all the time.
Oh, sure, NYU, sure. Okay, so there's a big book in every American hospital that has all the causes of death listed, because you have to fill out a death certificate when someone expires, and you have to list the cause of death. There's all the various causes. But one's not in there. Natural death. It's not in the book. Because it doesn't happen in hospitals. Okay? It doesn't happen much at all anymore. Not many people in the U.S., in the Western world, die of natural causes. Remember, 80% die of cancer, heart disease, or stroke. And of the other 20%, they're all dying with diabetes, arthritis, and some other issue that's usually contributing. There are very few people that just get old enough and expire. But that's what's designed to happen. At some point, we simply cease to be alive because the body can no longer maintain life. But I feel relatively confident in saying, even though I'm not a doctor and I have no professional credentials, I feel relatively confident in saying it wasn't supposed to happen at 47 like it did for this guy. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. But this was a man who ate no produce whatsoever. In fact, Santa Monica, California, I've done a lot of traveling. I've been in many countries. I've had the opportunity and privilege to speak to a lot of people all over the world. And wherever I go, I seek out the best produce I can find. And Santa Monica, California is a wonderful place to be in terms of food quality. They have a produce market. I think it's twice a week. They close off like 6 or 8 city blocks right in downtown. And as you guys probably know, something like 60% or 40% of the nation's produce comes from California. I don't know if you're aware that most of it is grown in the desert with irrigation, so that by the time the Rio Grande and Colorado rivers get into Mexico, there's no water left because it's all been taken out by the farmers. But putting that aside, there's amazing quality fresh produce in Santa Monica, California. And the day we spoke to him, he left her a message later on that day after our conversation. And he said, if you're going to the produce market tomorrow, would you pick up some of that fruit and shit for me? And this is a whole different concept for him. It's like, yeah, get me some of that stuff that you guys eat. Maybe I'll try that, right? So he literally dropped dead at 47 of no disease because he no longer had the ability to stay alive. Now, we talked about phase angle the other day. I mean, if we had the ability to measure it, the day I met him, it probably would have been 10 instead of 45 degrees. Now, 0's dead. 10 ain't much alive, right? That's what's going on. And in fact, when we walked away from him, we said goodbye to him. He went back up to his apartment and $9 million worth of closet space, and we went to do whatever we were going to do. And she said to me, what'd you think? And I said, I think he's in really bad shape. She said, what do you mean? He's fine. He's not sick. I said, well, I'm a Reiki master, so I can feel people's energy. I work with energy. I said, this guy had less energy than the telephone pole, than the parking meter we just walked by. I spent an hour standing next to him. There was no energy emanating from his body. So I wasn't surprised 2 months later when she sent me an email and said he died at 47. Okay? So understand that vitality, which is hard for us to measure without expensive instrumentation. Well, we could look at phase angle, which would be a good measure of that. It's a concept we can probably all understand. How much energy does someone have? Some people always feel tired and weakened with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, which I suffered from. That's the kind of low energy that I'm talking about. But that can change by giving the body a chance to cleanse itself and then meeting all of its needs so it has a chance to rebuild that vitality. That's what's possible to anyone. Now, there may be many ways to do that, but for my 2 cents, doing it by taking stuff, that's not the way. It's not about putting stuff in. You might feel better if you take a supplement or drink a juice, but you're just enervating the body. You'll feel better because you're stimulating the system. The way to do it is always the same. We get out of the way and let the body heal itself, which is what each of you here is doing. If you're watching this, you may not have done that or ever had that experience, but it's an amazing thing. And if you give your body that chance, I mean, some of you have been here long enough, you've already seen some pretty amazing things happen. How many of you spoke to Liza this morning? Yesterday evening, she tell you what happened with her? She told me that as long as she can remember, her mother said she can't remember a time when her glands weren't swollen. And yesterday, they weren't swollen. Like for the first time ever in, what is she, 36?
Still, she's 40.
40. Yeah. First time in, as many of those 40 years as she can remember, her glands have always been swollen. Not anymore. What did she take to do that? Nothing. Time. The opportunity for the body to cleanse and heal. That, remember, we are self-healing organisms like every other species. The best we can do, Voltaire said it very well. French philosopher and author Voltaire said, the art of medicine consists in amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. I mean, he didn't mean, go pick a bunch of stuff and consume it. He meant, well, you just relax and rest and let your body heal itself. That's what happens. I hope this has been helpful.